Would you spend the night in a haunted house? The UK is full of creepy mansions with real ghost stories, phantom nuns, headless ghosts, and even the devil himself. In this video, we'll explore the 10 most haunted mansions where visitors have heard screams, seen shadows move, and felt something unnatural. These aren't just stories, people swear these places are truly cursed. So turn off the lights, grab a blanket, you'll need it, and let's step inside the scariest homes in Britain. If you make it to the end, you're braver than most. Help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. If you love exploring haunted places, smash that subscribe button and join our ghost hunting crew. 1. Borley Rectory, the most haunted house in England. Borley Rectory, often called the most haunted house in England, has a terrifying reputation backed by decades of documented paranormal activity. Built in 1862 in Essex, the rectory became infamous after the Daily Mirror sent paranormal investigator Harry Price to study its phenomena in 1929. The hauntings began long before his arrival, with locals reporting ghostly nuns, phantom coaches, and unexplained footsteps. The most famous legend involves a Benedictine monk who fell in love with a nun from a nearby convent. When their affair was discovered, the monk was executed, and the nun was bricked alive within the convent walls. Her spirit is said to haunt the grounds, often seen gliding near the site where the original convent once stood. Residents of Borley Rectory experienced relentless poltergeist activity. Objects moved on their own, disembodied whispers echoed through empty rooms, and mysterious writing appeared on walls. The Bull family, who lived there in the early 20th century, reported frequent apparitions, including a headless man and a spectral woman in white. Reverend Lionel Foyster and his wife Marianne endured some of the worst disturbances. Marianne was allegedly attacked by unseen forces, thrown from her bed, and even locked inside rooms by an invisible presence. Harry Price's investigation recorded phantom bells, flying stones, and even a message scrawled on a mirror pleading, "Marianne, please help get me out." After the rectory burned down in 1939, witnesses claimed to see the ghostly figure of a nun in the ruins. Excavations later uncovered the skeletal remains of a young woman, fueling speculation that the legends were true. Even today, visitors to the site report cold spots, shadow figures, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Paranormal researchers believe the land itself is cursed, with residual energy replaying centuries of tragedy. Borley Rectory remains one of the most compelling cases of real hauntings in history, leaving no doubt that something supernatural once dwelled within its walls, and perhaps still does. Rainom Hall, home of the infamous Brown Lady ghost. Rainom Hall in Norfolk is one of Britain's most infamous haunted mansions, primarily due to the well-documented sightings of the Brown Lady, a ghost whose image remains one of the most credible pieces of spectral evidence ever captured. The grand 17th century country house has been home to the Townshend family for centuries, but its elegant halls are shadowed by a chilling presence. The ghost is believed to be Lady Dorothy Walpole, sister of Britain's first Prime Minister, Robert Walpole. According to legend, Dorothy was secretly married to Charles Townshend, but when he discovered her alleged affair, he locked her in a remote wing of the house until her death in 1726, though historical records suggest she actually died of smallpox. Whether by tragedy or betrayal, her spirit never left. The first recorded sighting of the Brown Lady occurred in 1835 when Colonel Loftess and a guest saw a spectral figure in an old-fashioned brown dress gliding through the halls. Her face was described as eerily decayed, with hollow eyes that seemed to burn with an unholy light. The encounter left the colonel deeply shaken, and soon after, another guest fled the house in terror after seeing the same apparition on the staircase. The most famous incident, however, took place in 1936 when photographers from Country Life magazine captured what appears to be the ghost descending the grand staircase. The image, examined by experts and deemed authentic, shows a translucent woman in a brown gown, her face eerily illuminated. Skeptics have tried to debunk it, but no convincing explanation has ever fully dismissed the photograph's unnerving clarity. Even in recent years, visitors and staff report unexplained phenomena, cold drafts in sealed rooms, the sound of rustling skirts when no one is present, and fleeting glimpses of a woman in period dress. Some claim to feel an overwhelming sadness near the staircase, as if the ghost is trapped in an endless loop of her final moments. Paranormal investigators have recorded strange EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, and sudden temperature drops in areas linked to her sightings. Unlike many ghost stories, the hauntings at Rainom Hall are supported by multiple credible witnesses and tangible evidence, making the Brown Lady one of Britain's most enduring and terrifying phantoms. The house remains privately owned, but its legends ensure that the mystery and the fear live on. Chillingham Castle, a fortress filled with tortured spirits. Chillingham Castle, a medieval fortress in Northumberland, is often called Britain's most haunted castle due to its gruesome history and relentless paranormal activity. Dating back to the 12th century, the castle was a strategic stronghold during wars between England and Scotland, and its dungeons were used for torture and executions. The sheer amount of suffering within its walls has left an indelible mark, with countless visitors and staff reporting terrifying encounters. One of the most famous ghosts is the Blue Boy, whose agonized cries were heard for years before renovations revealed the skeletal remains of a young boy trapped behind a wall, dressed in blue. Guests in the Pink Room have reported seeing a faint blue glow around the bed at midnight, followed by the child's desperate screams before fading into silence. Another notorious spirit is that of John Sage, a former torturer in the castle's employ during the reign of King Edward I. Sage took sadistic pleasure in his work, and it's said he personally executed over 50 Scottish prisoners in the castle's bloody chamber. After being stabbed to death by one of his victims' relatives, his malevolent spirit remained. Visitors describe sudden drops in temperature, the smell of rotting flesh, and the feeling of being watched in the torture chamber. Some have even reported seeing a shadowy figure with hollow eyes lurking in the corners, believed to be Sage himself, still tormenting the living. The castle's Great Hall is haunted by Lady Mary Berkeley, whose husband abandoned her for her own sister. Heartbroken, she wandered the castle in grief until her death, and her ghostly figure, dressed in gray, is often seen drifting through the halls, weeping. The chapel, too, has its share of spirits. Phantom chanting has been recorded when the room is empty, and some visitors have felt invisible hands gripping their shoulders. Even the castle's grounds are haunted. The ghost of a young girl named Elizabeth is said to appear near the old oak tree, where she was accidentally killed by a stray arrow during a hunt. Chillingham's paranormal activity is so intense that paranormal investigators and TV shows like Most Haunted have documented countless unexplained phenomena, from disembodied voices to full-bodied apparitions. The castle's current owners openly embrace its haunted reputation, offering overnight ghost tours for brave visitors. Those who stay often report being touched by unseen hands, hearing whispers in empty rooms, and even witnessing objects move on their own. Unlike many haunted locations, Chillingham's ghosts are not mere legends. They are a constant, unsettling presence, making it one of the few places where the past feels violently, undeniably alive. Pluckleys Black Horse House, part of the most haunted village in England. Pluckley, a quaint village in Kent, holds the ominous title of England's most haunted village, and at its heart lies the infamous Black Horse House, a former coaching inn steeped in spectral lore. The building, now a private residence, was once a bustling stop for travelers, but its dark past has left an indelible imprint. The most persistent ghost is that of a highwayman who was shot dead outside the inn after a botched robbery. Locals claim his spirit still lingers, often seen lurking near the old stables or heard whistling a haunting tune in the dead of night. Witnesses describe a shadowy figure in a long coat, his face obscured by a tricorn hat, who vanishes when approached, a chilling reminder of the violent end he met on those very grounds. Another tragic tale tied to the Black Horse House is that of a young woman who took her own life in one of its upstairs rooms after being jilted by her lover. Her restless spirit is said to remain, with visitors reporting the sound of muffled sobs echoing through the corridors and the faint scent of lavender, a fragrance she allegedly wore in life. Some have even glimpsed her sorrowful figure standing, At an upper window, her pale face pressed against the glass as if still waiting for her lost love. The room where she died is said to be unnaturally cold, with an oppressive atmosphere that makes even the bravest souls uneasy. The inn's cellars, once used to store ale, are another hot spot for paranormal activity. Workers and residents have reported hearing the clinking of bottles and the murmur of phantom conversations, as if the echoes of rowdy patrons from centuries past still linger. One particularly terrifying account involves a former owner who fled the house after encountering a black, shapeless mass that slithered across the floor before disappearing into the walls. Others have spoken of sudden, inexplicable gusts of wind that extinguish candles and slam doors shut, even when no windows are open. Pluckleys' reputation as a haunted village only amplifies the eerie aura of the Black Horse House. With over a dozen documented ghosts in the area, including the infamous Screaming Woods where the spirit of a gypsy woman is said to wail, the village is a magnet for paranormal investigators. The Black Horse House, however, stands out for its density of hauntings, each tied to a tragic, verifiable history. Whether it's the highwayman's ghost, the heartbroken woman, or the unseen forces in the cellar, the house remains a focal point of Pluckleys' spectral legends, a place where the past refuses to stay buried and the dead still walk among the living. Blickling Hall. The headless ghost of Anne Boleyn roams here. Blickling Hall, the magnificent Jacobean mansion in Norfolk, is steeped in centuries of history and spectral lore. Its most famous ghostly resident is none other than Anne Boleyn, the ill-fated second wife of King Henry VIII, who was born at Blickling, or possibly at the earlier manor house that stood on the same site. Beheaded on false charges of treason and adultery in 1536, Anne's spirit is said to return to her childhood home every year on the anniversary of her execution. Witnesses describe a ghastly procession, a phantom carriage drawn by headless horses and driven by a headless coachman, thunders up the driveway at midnight. Inside, Anne sits holding her severed head in her lap, her face a mask of sorrow. The carriage vanishes upon reaching the house, but those who've seen it speak of an overwhelming sense of dread that lingers long after. But Anne isn't the only ghost wandering Blickling's grand halls. The library, a treasure trove of rare books, is haunted by Sir John Fastolf, a 15th century knight said to have inspired Shakespeare's Falstaff. His restless spirit is blamed for sudden cold spots and the sound of rustling pages when no one is present. More chillingly, the Blue Room is notorious for poltergeist activity. Visitors report beds shaking violently in the night, and one guest claimed to have been pushed down the stairs by an unseen force. Staff whisper of a white lady, believed to be Lady Eleanor Talbot, another tragic figure from the Boleyn era, who glides silently through the upstairs corridors, her presence heralded by the faint scent of roses. The grounds, too, hold dark secrets. The ancient yew hedge planted in the Tudor era is said to be a portal for spirits, with visitors reporting shadowy figures darting between the trees at dusk. Near the lake, the ghost of a young maid, drowned centuries ago in a tragic accident, has been seen weeping on the shore. Even skeptics are unsettled by Blickling's atmosphere. Paranormal investigators have recorded disembodied whispers and sudden temperature drops, particularly in the Long Gallery, where portraits of the Boleyns seem to watch passers-by with unnerving intensity. Unlike many haunted locations, Blickling's ghost stories are deeply intertwined with real historical figures and events, making its hauntings all the more compelling. The National Trust, which now manages the estate, acknowledges the supernatural lore, even hosting ghost tours that delve into the mansion's eerie past. Whether it's Anne Boleyn's annual visitation or the unseen hands that rearrange books in the library, Blickling Hall remains a place where history doesn't just echo. It lingers, restless and unresolved, in every shadowed corner. Tatan Old Hall, a phantom funeral procession appears. Tatan Old Hall in Cheshire stands as one of England's most enigmatic haunted mansions, its weathered Tudor beams hiding centuries of spectral activity. The most persistent and chilling phenomenon centers around the ghostly funeral procession that materializes within its ancient walls. Multiple witnesses over the years have reported hearing the slow, mournful tolling of phantom bells in the dead of night. followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps and dragging chains moving through the upstairs corridors. Those brave enough to investigate have described seeing a line of shadowy figures carrying a coffin through the hallways, their faces obscured by hoods, their forms seeming to float rather than walk. The procession always disappears when it reaches the old chapel wing, leaving behind an oppressive atmosphere of grief so tangible that some visitors have broken down in tears without understanding why. The identity of these mournful spirits remains a mystery, though local legends suggest they may be connected to the tragic history of the Massey family, who owned the hall during the English Civil War. Records show several family members met violent ends during this turbulent period, including one who was reportedly dragged to his death by horses. This connection to violent death might explain why the hall's oldest section, particularly the stone-flagged Great Hall, seems to hold residual energy from the past. Staff and visitors alike report sudden drops in temperature in specific spots, accompanied by the feeling of being watched from the shadows. The sound of whispered conversations in empty rooms is so common that paranormal investigators have captured numerous EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, of what sound like arguments in archaic English. One particularly disturbing account comes from a night watchman in the 1970s who swore he saw the figure of a woman in Tudor dress standing at the top of the main staircase. When he approached, the apparition's face allegedly melted away, leaving only a grinning skull before vanishing completely. Others have reported seeing the ghostly figure of a young boy peering from the mullioned windows when the building is known to be empty. The cellar, with its original 16th century brickwork, seems to be a focal point for paranormal activity, with numerous reports of an unseen presence that breathes heavily on the back of visitors' necks before pushing them toward the ancient well, hidden beneath the floorboards. What makes Tatan Old Hall's hauntings particularly compelling is their consistency across centuries. The funeral procession was first documented in parish records from 1742, and similar reports continue to this day. The National Trust, which now manages the property, has recorded over 200 separate paranormal incidents in the last decade alone, from unexplained knocking sounds to full-bodied apparitions. Unlike many haunted locations where activity comes and goes, Tatan Old Hall seems to exist in a perpetual state of supernatural unrest, as if the building itself refuses to let its tragic past fade into history. Whether it's the sorrowful funeral party, the angry whispers of long-dead Masseys, or something more sinister lurking in the cellar, the hall stands as a stark reminder that some stories and some souls never find peace. Muncaster Castle. Haunted by the White Lady and the tolling bell ghost, Muncaster Castle in Cumbria has stood sentinel over the Esk Valley for nearly 800 years, its ancient stones steeped in bloodshed and supernatural lore. The castle's most famous specter is the White Lady, believed to be the spirit of Mary Bragg, a young girl murdered on the grounds in the early 19th century after accidentally discovering a local smuggling operation. Visitors to the tapestry room, where she's most frequently seen, report sudden drops in temperature and the overwhelming scent of roses before catching glimpses of a pale figure in Victorian dress. Staff tell of finding the room's four-poster bed perfectly made after being left in disarray, with the distinct impression of a body having lain upon the covers. The ghostly tolling of the castle's bell, often heard when no human hand could have rung it, is said to herald her appearances, a phenomenon documented as far back as 1862, when servants reported hearing the bell peal at midnight during a storm, only to find the bell rope still and dry. The castle's violent history manifests in other disturbing ways. The ghost of Tom Fool, Thomas Skelton, the castle's infamous 16th century jester and alleged murderer, is said to stalk the corridors. Historical records confirm Skelton was hired to entertain the Pennington family, but developed a reputation for cruelty. Legend claims he murdered a carpenter on the estate by luring him into quicksand, and visitors to the octagonal library, built on the site of Skelton's death, report hearing maniacal laughter and feeling sudden, inexplicable shoves. The castle's current owners have documented over 300 paranormal incidents in the past decade alone, including the mysterious appearance of fresh blood stains on furniture that disappear when examined. Perhaps most chilling is the ongoing phenomenon. In the castle's chapel, where the sound of phantom chanting fills the air despite the space being empty. In 2015, a BBC film crew captured what sounded like a Gregorian chant on their equipment, though no such recording was being made at the time. The castle's grounds hold their own horrors. The dark walk woodland is avoided after dusk due to, numerous reports of a shadowy figure that follows visitors before vanishing near the old well, where local lore says at least 3 servants met untimely ends. Unlike many haunted locations, Muncaster's ghosts seem particularly aware of the living, with multiple accounts of spirits reacting to modern visitors, from the White Lady appearing in family photographs to Tom Fool's ghost reportedly whispering threats in the ear of a visiting psychic. The castle's long, documented history of supernatural activity makes it one of Britain's most authentically haunted stately homes, where the past doesn't just echo, it actively engages. Bottlewitten Castle, soldiers' ghosts from WWI still linger. Bottlewitten Castle in North Wales stands as one of Britain's most haunted military sites, its elegant Victorian facade concealing a dark history of suffering that has left permanent psychic scars. During World War I, the castle served as a hospital and convalescence home for wounded soldiers, and the echoes of their pain and trauma seem to have seeped into the very walls. Visitors consistently report encountering spectral soldiers in period uniforms, their ghostly forms often seen limping through corridors or standing at windows staring blankly at the grounds. The most frequently witnessed apparition is that of a young officer in a mud-spattered trench coat who appears near the grand staircase, his face frozen in an expression of silent anguish before fading into nothingness. Staff have documented over 150 sightings of this particular spirit since the 1980s, with many witnesses unaware of the castle's military history beforehand. The castle's basement reveals even more disturbing phenomena. Originally used as a makeshift morgue during the war, the area now induces sudden nausea and dizziness in visitors, with some reporting the overwhelming smell of disinfectant mixed with rotting flesh, a horrific combination familiar to WWI field hospitals. Paranormal investigators have captured dozens of EVPs here, including moans of pain and whispered pleas for water in early 20th century dialects. In 2012, a museum curator working alone after hours reported seeing an entire row of phantom hospital beds materialize in the basement, complete with blood-stained sheets and spectral patients before vanishing seconds later. The experience left her so shaken she refused to enter the area alone again. Beyond its wartime ghosts, Bottlewitten harbors older, more sinister presences. The portrait gallery becomes a hotspot of activity at night, with multiple witnesses reporting that the eyes of painted subjects follow visitors while their expressions change from benign to menacing. The most notorious is the portrait of a Victorian gentleman whose face allegedly contorts into a scream when viewed after midnight. The castle's Elizabethan wing, built on the site of a much older structure, houses something far more disturbing, an entity known only as the Watcher. Described as a tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes, this presence has been blamed for leaving deep scratch marks on doors and the unexplained deaths of several dogs over the centuries. Staff have recorded temperatures dropping to near freezing in its presence, along with electronic equipment failing inexplicably. What makes Bottlewitten's hauntings particularly compelling is their persistence across different eras of the castle's history. From the tortured souls of WWI soldiers to whatever ancient malevolence stalks the Elizabethan wing, the building seems to act as a supernatural sponge, absorbing the suffering of every generation that passes through its doors. Unlike many haunted locations where activity comes in waves, Bottlewitten's ghosts remain constantly present, their tragedies replaying in an endless loop that visitors may unwittingly step into at any moment. The castle stands as a stark reminder that some wounds never heal, not even in death. Lidstep Flats, Dartmouth, a former mansion with poltergeist activity. Lidstep Flats, a sprawling Victorian mansion overlooking the sea in Dartmouth, Devon, harbors one of Britain's most disturbing poltergeist cases, a haunting so violent it drove multiple residents to abandon the property. Originally built as a grand holiday home in the 1880s, the building's dark reputation began in the 1930s when a family reported furniture moving by itself and unseen hands hurling objects across rooms. The activity escalated dramatically in the 1970s when the property was converted into flats, with tenants reporting a terrifying array of phenomena centered around apartment 3. One resident described waking to find deep scratches covering her body, while another fled after witnessing a shadowy figure materialize from the wall and attempt to strangle her. The most chilling account comes from a night in 1978 when 6 independent witnesses, including 2 police officers called to the scene, watched in horror as a heavy oak table rose 5 feet into the air and slammed against the ceiling before crashing down. The entity, or entities, at Lidstep appear to feed on fear. Psychic investigators who visited in the 1980s documented doors slamming with enough force to crack plaster, lights flickering in rhythmic patterns, and an invisible presence that would breathe directly into people's ears. One medium claimed to have made contact with multiple spirits, including a Victorian maid who died in childbirth, and a malevolent sailor from the 18th century who seemed to delight in terrorizing residents. The basement, originally the mansion's kitchen, is considered the epicenter of activity. Visitors report sudden temperature drops, the sound of knives being sharpened, and an overwhelming sense of being watched from the darkness. In 2003, builders renovating the space discovered human bones hidden within the walls, though records showed no missing persons connected to the property. What makes Lidstep Flats particularly unsettling is the pattern of its hauntings. Unlike most locations where activity comes and goes, the disturbances here follow a clear progression, starting with minor phenomena like misplaced items before escalating to physical attacks. Every long-term resident has reported waking to find their beds shaking violently or their pillows being yanked from beneath their heads. The current owners acknowledge the property's haunted reputation, but refuse to discuss specific incidents, though neighbors claim the sound of phantom footsteps and disembodied screams still occasionally echo through the building at night. Paranormal. Researchers speculate that the mansion, built on a cliffside with a network of sea caves beneath it, may sit on a natural ley line or geological fault that amplifies supernatural activity. Whatever the cause, Lidstep Flats remains one of Britain's most authentically terrifying haunted residences, a place where the boundary between our world and whatever lies beyond grows dangerously thin. Loftess Hall, the devil himself, is said to have visited Loftess Hall, the imposing 14th century mansion perched on the windswept Hook Peninsula in Ireland, harbors one of the most chilling demonic hauntings in British and Irish folklore. The legend dates back to 1775, when a mysterious stranger arrived during a violent storm and was invited to stay by the Tottenham family. During a card game in the ornate tapestry room, Anne Tottenham dropped a card and bent to retrieve it, only to see the visitor had cloven hooves instead of feet. When she screamed in horror, the stranger erupted through the ceiling in a burst of flames, leaving a permanent hole that could never be repaired. This encounter marked the beginning of centuries of supernatural torment. The house became plagued by disembodied screams, the sound of cards being shuffled in empty rooms, and the overwhelming stench of sulfur. Anne, driven mad by the experience, eventually retreated to the Devil's Room where the incident occurred, rocking endlessly in her chair until her death, a chair that still moves on its own to this day. The paranormal activity at Loftess Hall is unusually well documented. In the 19th century, priests performed multiple exorcisms after servants reported seeing shadowy figures with glowing eyes crawling along the walls. During renovations in the 1980s, workers discovered the skeletal remains of a child hidden within the walls of the nursery, explaining the frequent reports of a ghostly child's laughter and tiny handprints appearing on mirrors. The most disturbing modern encounter occurred in 2015, when a tour guide captured what appears to be a demonic face in the window of the tapestry room, a photograph examined and verified by paranormal experts. Visitors consistently report being scratched or pushed on the grand staircase, while others describe an invisible presence that whispers blasphemies in their ears. The basement, once used as a smuggling tunnel, is considered particularly dangerous, with multiple people experiencing temporary paralysis and visions of a horned figure in the darkness. What makes Loftess Hall unique is the enduring potency of its hauntings. Unlike locations where activity fades, the mansion's supernatural phenomena have remained consistently violent for over 2 centuries. Paranormal investigators have recorded demonic growls on EVP recordings, documented sudden temperature, drops of 30 degrees, and captured countless shadow figures on thermal cameras. The current owners have preserved the house exactly as it was during Anne Tottenham's time, including the unrepaired hole in the tapestry room ceiling, maintaining what some believe is a literal portal to the infernal. Whether viewed as a cautionary tale about inviting strangers in from the storm or as genuine demonic infestation, Loftess Hall stands as a terrifying testament to the reality of supernatural evil, a place where the devil himself is said to have once taken refuge and may still linger.